What's up, guys? I wanted to do a very quick video to talk about my initial thoughts about the new Lexus LF-30 concept car that just came out in Tokyo, and I want to take a look at the three basic steps of automotive design in the three levels of attention to detail that is considered when you're designing a car. And so, starting with the overall proportions of the car, the overall graphics, the silhouette, the volumes and everything, and how everything looks at first glance. I think they did a pretty good job, the Lexus/Toyota designers, to create a overall design, especially if you look at the car from the side view. You see a silhouette that's actually pretty cool. It's a little bit unexpected from the sort of package and the volume that you have with this car. You know, there's a lot of tension in the line, in the center line, the silhouette of the car, and I think they did a good job of bringing that sort of stale package, the single box almost kind of overall design of the car, and turn it into a pretty cool looking silhouette, a fast looking silhouette for the type of car that it is. And then going around and looking at the overall volumes of the car, there's a pretty cool tapering in plan view. When you're looking at the greenhouse area, the cabin area is wider in the front, and it really tapers really sharply into the back, and it creates a pretty big mass over the rear wheels, the rear shoulders, and it creates sort of an interesting form going through the side glass as well. Practical, maybe not, but it looks pretty cool, I think. But I have to say, the overall proportions, other than the fact that they did a pretty good job with the silhouette of the car from the side view, the overall proportions look kind of whatever. You know, it's like I said, it's just a single box design, which a lot of futuristic electric autonomous cars are employing nowadays. It's a pretty simple design. When you're looking at it from the front, it has, I guess, graphically it has two big side intakes, making it look a little bit like the Prius or the Mirai. If you're looking at it from the pure standpoint of volume design and form design, it's a really interesting car. Just going around it, just looking at the photos, different angles from the car, it looks really interesting. It looks like there is no aspect of the car that's not been paid a lot of attention to. And again, the volumes that you see, the kind of forms that you see, the shapes all around the car, the interactions of the lines and the forms coming together, it's just new, it's fresh. It's something that you don't really see. I mean, it is a concept car, that's true, but even for a concept car, it's pretty fresh, and Lexus is nothing with their concepts if not fresh. Going back to the overall shape of the car, if you take away the things that are solely concept and are definitely going to be taken away once we go into production, if it goes into production, you just have a box. Typically, Lexus designs don't end up looking a lot like their production counterparts, at least not recently. But it'll be interesting to see what they choose to do from here. It has hints of their current design, but it kind of shows where they want to take it, and that's always cool to see in a production, in a concept car, I should say. So first read, great silhouette, really great volumes and forms all around the car, cool looking lines, very new stuff, very fresh stuff, which is definitely expected from Lexus concept car. Now we move into the second read. We get a little bit closer to these details, to the graphics. You look at the form of the taillights and the headlights, the grille, the side window graphic, the lines that sort of connect all the little forms. There's a lot of interest there as well. I think they did a pretty cool job of just visualizing ideas that you know, it's kind of an imagination of the future of what Lexus design can be. And especially the one part that really caught my attention was the design of the taillights. It's a three-dimensional version of the sort of L-shaped looking Lexus taillight graphics that we've seen in the past, or we currently have in the market. And it's completely three-dimensional. They've given it so much form, so much depth, so much volume, and same thing with the spindle grill, as they call it. It's now a physical spindle. If you look at it, it has a lot of form and volume wrapping around and into the grill, the intakes of the car. It was something that caught my eye. Proportionally, does it look great? Maybe not, but it's an interesting idea. When you see it, you're like, oh, huh, I've never thought of the idea of a spindle grill like that. It'll be interesting to see what they choose to do with it going forward. So that's the front and the rear basically, but when you're looking at the side of the car, there's a lot of interesting things happening. There's a lot of form, a lot of intersecting volumes, which is sort of the motto of Lexus, has been for a while. It's not as wild as some of the other designs that we've seen in recent years, but in fact I would probably say it's a lot more towards the conservative side, and that was really the surprising thing about it for me. The sort of main character line, the main shoulder line that comes from the front towards the rear and ends just before the rear fender, as well as the sort of the bottom side air out volume, is kind of surprising to me, especially considering how the Lexus design language has developed over the past few years, and how even in this car you see the more angular look of everything, the volumes, the proportions, and then you see this kind of really bubbly, like 90s concept car kind of volume and form when you get to the sort of the bottom of that air out area, and it's just really surprising. To me, it's not the greatest execution, and you know, I try not to form too many opinions at first glance on my first impression of the car, but I feel like it's just not a very successful area of design for that car. But try not to talk shit also, but I feel like there was a little bit more potential, a little bit more they could have done with that, or maybe a different route they could have taken. Either way, a lot of interesting volume there. Again, going back to the window graphics, it does a really interesting thing. There's a crease in it. It just looks cool. It looks fresh. You don't often see a lot of form in the windows, because you know they have to roll down at some point. But you know, and in the realm of concept cars, I think that's pretty interesting to see. And a lot of people get turned off by it just because of the fact that there's no way that can, at least with current technology, that could make it into production. So it's just fantasizing. But the purpose of the concept car is to show what the sort of the thought process and the direction that the company's trying to go is to the masses, and I think this car does that pretty well. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the third read details as well. And third read is basically when you get super up close and you scrutinize the little details of the car, and because you know, without the three levels, the design cannot be complete. And when you have really cool proportions, when you have really cool graphics, you have to match it with the same level of attention to detail when it comes to the little stuff, the door handle, the little sort of details that go into the headlights and the taillights, the sort of touch and feel of everything. It really factors in, especially when you're talking about a luxury manufacturer like Lexus. These are the things that really take the design to the next level. So looking at, I mean, all we have are basically pictures, the press photos, and as well as the photos that we've seen so far from the auto show, but just with a really quick sort of examination of what we have. There's a lot of cool graphic work that you can see in the front and the rear, especially going back to that taillight. Aside from the fact that you have the L shape, the Lexus taillight design, and you combine that with how voluminous it is and how deep it goes, and you also have these sort of little graphics, the pattern all around the overall volume of the taillight, and I think again that gives it a little bit more interest. It begs your eye to get closer, and that's all you want from an interesting design basically. You have very cool elements in the interior as well. It's not anything really groundbreaking, it's just more of a furthering of the design language of Lexus in my opinion. with the design of the seats. The steering wheel is pretty interesting, and I guess probably the most obvious third read detail that everybody can easily pay attention to is the design of the wheels, and I think they did a really awesome job with that as well. Just almost integrating the wheels into the tires, which is not necessarily anything new, but the way it's done in this car is pretty cool looking. It's a fresh design. It's very striking. It may not be anything necessarily too crazy, but it may just be the one aspect of the design of this car that could most directly be implemented in production cars. Pretty impressive concept car from Lexus. They've had many of those, but yeah, this one is one for sure that grabs the eye and should get people talking. A lot of interpretations of current Lexus design features that we should probably expect to see in the future in production cars, and it'll be really interesting to see how people react to these new features. You know, like I mentioned, the taillight, the headlights, the new spindle grille, if it is to be the sort of the electric slash autonomous direction that Lexus has taken with this car, maybe a path of the future. But overall, again, upon sort of the first impressions of it, it has its areas of success and it has some areas that you're like, I don't know about that. So again, it's going to take me a few days to really form my complete opinion about it, but I just wanted to share with you my initial thoughts and things to look forward to for everybody. So to summarize, first read design, the overall proportion, the given package is sort of stale, not too interesting, not too beautiful of an automotive proportion, but they did a really awesome job with the silhouette, especially to make it look really sporty, really interesting, really sleek, and the volumes, I'm not sure if they help or not, but they're certainly create a lot of interest around the car from both the front and the rear. The striking sort of gull wing door design, these are all things that add to the intrigue of the car from the first read. Come into a little bit closer to the second read, the graphics, the forms in the glass, in the sheet metal, and how everything is treated, the front, the intakes, the spindle grille, and the interesting voluminous taillights. And then you get into the third read details, the little stuff, the patterns, the interior features and everything. And again, it's a concept car that's thoroughly well done, thoroughly thought out, I should say. And I'm curious to see what everybody thinks about it. I think there are successful elements of it, and there are some elements that are like, what the so I'm curious to see what you guys think. Please share your opinions with me. Yeah, so anyway, successful design feature, number one most successful design feature, in my opinion, has to be the silhouette of the car. It's really cool, really sleek, really laid back, really fast looking, so a really good job there. And the least successful, in my opinion, area of design of this car has to be that sort of not fitting side volume, the air out, and the character lines. Again, I don't want to talk shit, but it kind of don't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, so that's it, my babies. That's the Lexus LF-30 concept car that was just unveiled in Tokyo. Again, let me know what you think about it, and I will see you next time. Peace.